mean, I'll speak for myself, I guess. So we're here at NCI Summit in Asheville, North Carolina, one of my favorite cities on earth. And I'm here with Jim Bergmann. So how the heck are you, Jim?
I am doing great.
Yeah. It's good to see you. You look
It
good.
is. It's better to be seen than viewed.
It is
That's
true.
what I always say.
It is true. So we'll start with you look good. Seems like you're feeling pretty healthy. You seem like you have more energy than I do right now. So
yeah, I'm actually feeling really good. I feel like I'm back to about 99%. I mean, it's awesome. I feel really good. So everything's in remission. All that's behind me. I guess got tested about 3 weeks ago. I'm clearing the CT scan again. So it's all going the right direction.
Awesome.
And back to work a couple months and doing tons of updates to MeasureQuick and BlueVac and just, I don't know, reimagining things. So it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. So start with the kind of the MeasureQuick 3.0 because I mean, I know a little bit about it, but I don't even know the whole story there. So kind of talk us through the thinking and some of those changes.
So, I mean, the thinking was, we went from a lot of it was just going back to our roots and becoming more tech centric. I mean, for a while there, we were trying to figure out how to grow the company, and we put a sales led growth plan in place, and it's like figured out, wow, we got to have salespeople, and that didn't work because we didn't have a lot of salespeople, and we said, you know what, we need to go back to roots. We need to go back and go with product led growth again and go back to the technicians, because the technicians were really what was pulling MeasureQuick through to their companies. And it's like, we realized all of a sudden, like, our best advocates were people that were actually using it every day in their companies and would go back to their boss and say, hey, we need to implement this company wide because I'm tired of going on callbacks from somebody else, or this has helped me along the way, or I've made this sale, or whatever it was. But we just sort of reflected on the value that we got from the technician. And we said, we need to go back to that. And so we redesigned MeasureQuick so that it put the gauges front and center again. We put in some AI system basically, and it's not really AI. It is AI, technically AI, but it walks the technician through step by step how to use MeasureQuick, and it brings a lot of things forward that we're getting left behind. And it's just, again, it was like going back to our roots and going back to make the product something that technicians would get a lot of value out of. And in return, we're hoping they take us back to the owners of the company and get us as part of the standard operating procedure.
Yeah, and it does seem like you're making a lot of progress in terms of partnerships, just like different or good-sized organizations, contractors, that sort of thing, but also organizations like NCI.
Oh yeah. That's been sort of our MO the entire time, was to have this platform out there that was sort of agnostic, that everybody could use, that we could get in and automate a lot of the processes that companies like NCI were doing. I mean, if you think about it, for like the last 20 years, NCI has been teaching to do by hand what we completely automated. So like this group here is an incredible group of people for us, because they're already performance contractors. They already see the value in this. We're not trying to show them the value and the app. It's like, holy cow, this makes it streamlined and so much easier to do than it's ever been. And so they're like not only the ideal client for us, but this is also the solution that a lot of their members have been looking for. So it's like a really big win-win for us here. And then, we tied in with TrueFlow Grid. So that gives us a really high quality airflow measurement, which is really important for MeasureQuick. And then obviously, tied in with ServiceTitan and House Call Pro CRMs, things like that. It just makes the whole platform really, really robust, really easy to use and, adopt. And so this has been a really good event for us, just because we're able to fill a lot of needs for a lot of people that are actually really into doing the type of testing that we prescribe.
Yeah. And so when you think about like the history of NCI, obviously you guys have been kind of running parallel to them ever since the beginning. They've had software and you've had software. What do you think was like maybe some of the mindset shift or maybe just the inflection point that allowed you guys to partner in this way? Because I think a lot of us never saw some of this coming. It seems like people are doing a really good job of finding your lanes now.
Yeah, no, I think it was a shift in the organization. when Rob Falk died, it left a big hole in the organization,
Yeah.
and how they're going to do things and how they're going to move forward. And Rob and I did a lot of the same things. We took a little bit different approach to it here and there. I was really regimented on science, always have been. I'm really technical. I'm like, this is I always like very regimented on the way things are done. Rob was super strong on taking those types of things and marketing them. And it really needed both, because, and so when Rob passed away, it was an opportunity for us to help on the technical side, but then also NCI to really, what they're really good at is helping contractors understand how to make money implementing this product. So it was a really good opportunity for both companies to come together and not lose any momentum, and provide a really good service to the NCI membership group.
Yeah, good stuff. So when you think about maybe some of the new directions that you've taken with MeasureQuick, even just from the application itself, maybe the flow, or some of the things that you're doing there, what are some things that you're excited about? Or
oh gosh, the user interface is probably the biggest thing. And we one thing we did was made a grid view. A lot of people want to like see all the readings on one screen and be able to just very quickly make an assessment and look at what's in range, what's out of range. And with the original version of MeasureQuick, you had to go through multiple screens in order to see everything. Grid view allows you to see everything on one screen. So it really made it a lot easier. Then we introduced guided workflows that were sort of a step-by-step process. So if you had somebody who was new to MeasureQuick, you could put them in a guided workflow. They could get exactly the results we wanted to get at the end, and then transition over to the standard workflows later on. So that was a great tool. And then the other thing we did was MQ Assist, and MQ Assist is a sort of it's not an interactive chatbot where you can talk to it, but it actually tells you sort of step by step. It says, hey, okay, let's start with adding tools to your toolbox. And here's a link to the toolbox. It takes you to the toolbox. You put the tools in. It says, okay, well, do you want to do a quick test? Do you want to start a project? And I want to start a project. And it walks you through there. And then it, walks you sort of step by step through the process to get you to fully leverage the platform, because MeasureQuick it's not complicated, but it's not easy if you've never used it before. It requires some training. And so we tried to lower the we call it the time to value, right? We wanted to get the time to value exponentially higher, so that as soon as you open up like when people were opening MeasureQuick that had never used it before, they're in a bind. They have a problem. They want to solve something really quickly. They need help with a diagnostic. They don't want to land on a page that says with a map and projects on it. They want to land on something like gauges that they go, oh, okay, I know what this is. I know what these numbers are. And how do I connect my probes, and how do I get going with it? So it was that fast time to value that we really focused on. And that's what I think a lot of the industry was really looking for. And so, just like I said, going back to our roots, going back to focusing on the technician instead of focusing on the projects, made us re-examine the way we were doing things, and just made a better product for everybody.
And I imagine also, just having been out longer, now there's a lot more people who are just aware of MeasureQuick in general.
Oh yeah. We're 7 years in. We've got like 120,000 plus downloads of or not registered users on MeasureQuick, probably double or triple that in downloads on there. And, around 11 to 16,000 active users a day, depending on the day on a 14-day window. So, I mean, it's like really cool seeing how many people actually are using MeasureQuick now. And it's becoming, people are more and more using it as a standard operating practice in their work. And we're seeing a lot of, companies that are like, okay, it's finally time to do this. We're going to commit to doing it. And they're actually taking the time to do the training and going through and making the CapEx investments in the probes and things like that, because because we're struggling to find skilled workers in the HVAC industry, and B, because they want to maximize profitability and reduce callbacks, things like that. I mean, there's a pain point they're trying to address, and we're the solution a lot of times for that.
Yeah, one of the things you've talked a lot about, and we talked about it a lot at Symposium last time, but I'm curious on if your thoughts have evolved on this at all, is this idea of finding some ways to get younger, newer workers involved in the trade more quickly, using MeasureQuick as a tool. How are you kind of thinking about that today, or where are you seeing some progress?
So we sat down and I wrote a whole article about the tech efficiency specialist and the advanced residential commissioning specialist. It was Tess and Arcs, and basically was a sort of a roadmap to bring people into the industry, because there's a lot of software it's not just us. I mean, that's the interesting thing. It's like there's products like Conduit coming out right now, and somebody can walk through and do a heat loss calculation in a few minutes, and get a really reasonable estimate of the size equipment they need on there. You can use products like MeasureQuick and get a very quick assessment of how the system's operating. And it's just like, we just need to teach people where to put the probes. And if they put the probes in the right place, then we can actually assist them in getting things done. So, and like Chad Simpson out in Ohio, one of the things he's doing is he's taking a guy or lady in, out of a different trade. So they're people that have mechanical ability, but not necessarily the technical abilities to do the HVAC stuff. But if you think about like what we do, a lot of times it's, we just need to know how to clean a filter. We know how to clean a condenser coil. We need to know how to unplug a condensate drain. We need to know how to identify dirt bypassing the filter. We need to know how to add refrigerant or remove refrigerant. Like, they're not very complicated tasks like it is to install a system, but if we can leverage technology to actually assist with the diagnostics, point them in the right direction, and then have the ability to remotely share the data and get remote tech support when the technician's got a question or a problem. And for the guy on the other end of the line to be able to know that the superheat readings calculated correctly, the subcooling readings correct, the static pressure readings correct, have photos, if they need photos to understand where things are at. It's like we can actually do these things, and we can do them in very short order. And, I know we have several contractors that are doing exactly that. And because it comes back to finding what you talked about today, finding the right people, finding people that are naturally curious, finding people that want to work, finding people that want to do something, but they just haven't considered HVAC, and we're trying to get them up to speed quickly, right? And so it's just about making people an asset versus a liability as fast as possible.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, and I just wonder if you've seen this, Wall Street Journal wrote a piece on this about the tool belt generation. I've seen a lot more interest from young people, and it's increasing like really quickly from my perspective. People kind of realizing, hey, you can make good money being a plumber or a welder or an HVAC technician, and it kind of is more fun in a lot of ways. Have you seen that, or have you heard that?
For sure. We have a generation of people that they've interfaced with screens for so long that they're just thriving for human contact and interfacing with people and actually doing something with their hands. And there's a huge amount of gratification that comes with actually building something or doing something or standing back at the end of the day and looking at the work that you did. And when you're just interfacing with a screen all day, you can't really do that. You don't have this sense of pride of a job well done. I don't care if you're an electrician, a carpenter, a plumber, any skilled craft. It's like when you stand back and you look at what you did, you get this sense of accomplishment that you just don't get any other way. And I think that is something that people sort of yearn to have, and so the trades afford that. And on top of it, you can get into the trades and not obviously have this college debt. And then we also, trades people in general, I think they have a lot of characteristics that are attractive to other people outside of the industry. They're sort of accepting. It's a segment of the industry, I think, that really hasn't been politicized yet. People just come in, they do the work, they go home. Right.
Yeah.
It's and I think it's also an attractive part of the industry. It's just, you're just around people that actually enjoy what they do. And I think when you're around people that are happy, it's fun to work around them.
Yeah. One thing that I always find really interesting and remarkable in spaces like this here at Summit and at the symposium and other places like this is that, nobody cares like what political party you're part of, or, it's just a lot of the things that normally would divide people in a place like this. It doesn't exist. It's not what we're talking about. It's not what we're interested in. There isn't that level of agenda here. It really is about problem solving.
Right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of young people, I see that in my kids. I think of my son, Jude. He's 11 and he's just so, I just got him a 3D printer, and he just loves it. He's building stuff and he's always tinkering with things. And I think that the skilled trades are a place that people who have those inclinations where they just want to do cool stuff can land and not have to have some sort of big picture political agenda.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of that is like I said, the people around here are, they share, like nobody, there's people that covet knowledge for sure, but most of the people that are like in groups like this, they found out over their career that the more that they share, the more that they get back. And all of us that are also, I think, that are at places like this have realized we're lifelong learners. Like we're never like we really should call this the practice of HVAC, just like doctors practice or lawyers practice, because we never become masters of this craft. We're always practicing. And, like I still think we've forgotten more than we know. Like I go back to the old books, 20s and 30s. I'm a big history buff and I read that stuff. And it's like, because I want to understand like where did these things come from? Where did 400 CFM per ton come from? Where do the numbers drive from? So, and it's like, there's just so like, you can never learn this entire industry. So that's what keeps it like interesting, because every day is a new day. And then the technology advancements are so fast too. So you got to learn stuff that's new and you got to learn stuff that's 40 years old, because you're going to work on both. And I think that's, it just makes it fun and exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was actually, before we get off on another topic, I wanted to just kind of anchor to that, because the history side, I've been having fun going back, and, you've sent me some really cool old books over the years, and we've both always kind of bonded over that. But I'm excited. I want to do a series on nothing but just like interesting history stuff, and not really worry about, what it means, but just sort of go back into that, and specifically to our trade, because there's just so much fascinating history, like you said, that's been lost. I mean, that's what Dan Holohan talks about with Dead Man's Steam School.
Yep.
And there's a lot of value in that. But sometimes if you're always worried about how you're going to make money with something, you don't have that curiosity, where I think you and I have always pursued understanding things, at least to a large degree, just because it's fun. Like it's enjoyable to understand the world around us and how it works.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a big part of who I've always been. I mean, I think what's interesting with both of us is we sort of grew up in households where reading was normal, right? I mean, it's like my parents, we didn't watch TV. We read most of the time, went to the library and got 5 or 6 books a week, and we'd read books. And so, that's, for me, it was always like Mother Earth News and Popular Mechanics and how to hot rod your Volkswagen Bug. And,
Right.
And it was all, but a lot of that, what's cool when you get into the old books is that, back then, like if you're an engineer, air conditioning was like brand new. People were just learning about temperature and humidity and dew point and psychometrics, and they were just learning about airflow and fan design and all that kind of stuff. So when they were explaining it to engineers, it was very much like they're explaining it to a technician today. So it wasn't like reading an ASHRAE fundamentals handbook where everything's curve fit equations and done from empirical data. It was actually derived, and they would explain it in layman's terms. And it was like, and for me, like I can go back and actually understand at a fundamental level things that I just never considered before. And like when you get into the physics behind what we do, it's just so cool the way all these things interact. And it's never about learning. It's like, it's all fundamentals. And that's where we've fallen down as an industry, is we haven't learned the most basic of things, right? And that's a joke, master of the obvious. It's because we just never learned the fundamental thing, that if we get that one little hole filled, like it was specific, like for me, it was a specific heat. I never really realized, that the whole thing we're talking about, it takes 1 BTU to raise 1 pound of water, 1 degree Fahrenheit.
Right.
Well, it takes 0.24 BTUs to raise 1 pound of air, 1 degree Fahrenheit. And it's just like, oh, different materials have different specific heats. And it's like, that opened up a whole new world for me. It's just, but those are things when you're in a trade school, they're focused on the mechanics of what we do and not the science behind why we do it.
Yeah, it was interesting. This, and again, I keep going off here, but I had a conversation with Jonathan Schaefer, who's our employee development director, and he comes from he's an engineer by trade, and he comes from a very academic family. His dad was like a genius, college professor type guy, and we were talking about this, and he said, in past generations, people would pursue deep knowledge of like engineering and that kind of thing after they had already experienced a real world problem, whether it was because they were working like we did with our parents or whatever. And only in the modern world has these become completely separate disciplines. Even if you think about, I just got off a call with Heat Geek, the guys, Adam Chapman from over in UK, and over there they call technicians engineers. That's
Right.
the term they use. Only kind of in the modern world have we really separated those things out, where you have the academics and you have the engineers and then you have the field people, and they're so different. It really wasn't always that way.
It sort of reminds me of Dave Ramsey, where until you experience significant financial problems, you don't implement a system.
Right.
And that's his whole MO. I mean, it's sort of funny. You could try and teach that to kids in high school and they just wouldn't get it because they haven't struggled with it. And it's until you feel the pain of that problem, you don't really yearn for a solution like you do. And I think, that for me, it was like I was 15 years in the field doing commercial industrial work. And it was when I, started teaching that I found out I didn't know anything. I mean, it was like when I opened up chapters 1, 2, and 3, it was like a whole new world. It was like all the science behind what we did. And then all of a sudden things that, in our industry, we tend to like make up reasons why things happen if we don't know. We just look at what's happening. We say, okay, well, this makes sense. This is what happens to refrigerant when it enters a cylinder. This is what happens to air when it goes through a coil or whatever. So we make up reasons and they sound good and we test them against our theory and sometimes they pass and sometimes it's like, well, it seems that's the way most of the time. And until we know otherwise, that's what we sort of believe. And then once you get into the textbook and you actually start reading some stuff and you actually start teaching it, then you start going, oh, that makes sense.
Right. And now I know why I saw that all these
I know,
years.
Yeah. And you just don't know until you actually get into the fundamentals. And that's a big, like I learned more teaching than I learned at any other time in my career. And the biggest thing I learned was I didn't know near as much as I thought I did. And actually it wasn't year 1 that I figured this stuff out. It was like year 3, 4, and 5 when I had done it 3 or 4 or 5 times and all of a sudden it started to click.
Yeah.
So, and it was sort of fun too, because in the classroom, I remember I'd go out and tell the kids, well, here's what's going to happen. If you cut the airflow off to the system, it's going to flood the compressor. So we'd go, so let me show you. So I'd walk out there and hook up the gauges and I'd disconnect the evaporator fan and it's running with, a 10-degree coil and 19 degrees of superheat. And I'm like, well, that's not what I thought was going to happen. Right. And, but it was having that time in the lab to actually work with equipment and actually put it into duress that we could actually see what would happen. And then it was like, a lot of things I thought would happen didn't happen. And it was just a huge learning experience. So,
yeah, I've seen the same thing. So on that topic of training and education, I've seen a lot of people going up and visiting you and doing things up there. So what are you doing on that kind of training and education front right now?
The biggest thing we're on, well, I mean, we never stop training. I mean, It's just sort of funny that last week I did a video on Schrader cores that you don't need to reuse them. And and it's like it gotten like 20,000 impressions on LinkedIn. It's just like, and it was such a simple little thing. And it's like, I'd known that for a long time. And then all of a sudden it's like, it popped up because somebody said something and I had read it years ago and I didn't know it my entire life, obviously, but I read it years ago in a Schrader valve manual. So I just pulled the manual again and put it online. It's like, it created a whole bunch of stir. And it's like, that's what we sort of like to do at MeasureQuick is when somebody calls us with a technical problem or a question, or can you do this or can you do that? And we try and do like a little video on it because we figure, well, if one person had a problem with it, other people have.
Yeah.
And so lately what I've been doing is working really heavily on the blue vac application because it's been a few years since we've done anything with that application. And we did like multiple gauges so you can see what's going on at the pump and what's going on at the inlet core tool and what's going on at the far side of the system, and how, how the vacuum pulls down and how the readings go apart and how they converge back together and what happens to you do a decay test. And it's partly practical for technicians in the field because sometimes you want to have multiple gauges on a system, but a bigger part of that is for people that are in the classroom and in the lab, being able to explain what's going on in a vacuum. And then, what we do, I think really good at MeasureQuick, is we make data so you can visualize it. So you're less focused on the numbers, but more focused on, are things in the right range or outside of the range? And when you can start to visualize that data, it makes a huge, it makes a huge difference in your understanding. I think Ty Brenneman's probably one of the most appreciative people that we've made data so he can visualize, because he's a visual learner.
Right.
And once he could see those things, it's like he started to understand things in MeasureQuick that he didn't understand before. And I think, there's a lot of people like that. That's the way I am. I'm a visual learner also. So, that's why we built MeasureQuick the way we did.
Yeah. It also sounds like, just based on some conversations that we've had in the hallway, that you're doing a lot on the like understanding inverter systems and trying to really improve some of the, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how do you charge systems, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the whole electrification thing is going to be a giant train wreck unless we just make some simple improvements. It's like the equipment, we definitely have all the capability with the equipment that's available today. It's just we don't have all the technical expertise to make sure that the duct systems are correct, the airflow is correct, the charge is correct, the just some fundamental things. And evacuation's another key one, right? Evacuation is about removing moisture. So we got to make sure, if we're going to have these cold climate heat pumps that could be operated, let's say 15 degrees below zero, and that coil is going to be another 15 degrees below that we have the moisture out of the system. And
right.
And so like things like evacuation have become more important than ever. And so it's not anything but fundamentals, but we're not well rooted in the fundamentals. And that's what we're doing a lot of training on. And we're just trying to then step back, look at what we have with MeasureQuick, and try and make it easier for that whole time to value, because our time to value is like way too long. It was 2 or 3 weeks or a week before you really were proficient in our software. And now we're trying to get it into a few hours.
Yeah. So nowadays, for, say your mid-sized contractor, maybe they have 20 techs, something like that. If they were wanting to potentially implement MeasureQuick as sort of a core fundamental piece of their business, what would you suggest that they do today?
Well, the first thing I'd do is pull your techs and see who's using MeasureQuick. I mean, I have some large contractors that are like, oh no, we have a very regimented procedure. We don't have techs using MeasureQuick. And I'm like, really, what's your email domain? And I'll pull them up, and I'll have, out of 1,000 techs, they have 300 techs or plus using MeasureQuick that are registered with company corporate accounts, and we can see that they're using it. So the first thing is pull your employees and see who's using it already. And then, understand how they're using it. And then, those are the guys that I would send, like we have MeasureQuick training where we do train the trainers. Those are people I would send in and either do some training with, or we do online training with them. But the key thing is you probably have already techs using it. If they're using smart probes, there's a good chance they're using MeasureQuick. Right. And so the next thing is realistically is just putting together a little bit of a structured plan on how you want to roll it out in your company. A company of like 10 to 20 people is usually a week to get it implemented. It's not a big deal because the CapEx costs are low. Buying the probes and things is not a huge deal, like, buying them for 1,000 technicians. And
right.
And then also, you don't have as much turnover in the company. So, it just makes it easier for smaller companies. But right now it's, for small companies, it's not a big lift. Just call us, schedule a demo, schedule some training with some of our trainers. We've got 2 people that do training on MeasureQuick internally. Decide if you want to do a train the trainer or develop a champion within the company, and just roll it out and use it. It's not a heavy lift like it was.
So do you think nowadays, obviously we do a lot with the kind of building performance community. There's high performance HVAC, which is sort of the NCI thing. But then you have more generally building performance, building science, all that. Do you think a contractor needs to be a building performance or building science focused contractor to benefit from MeasureQuick or not?
Absolutely not. I mean, there are like building performances. It's very interesting if you talk to guys like Nate Adams, who are like really heavy on air sealing, fix the envelope, insulate, and then handle with the mechanical. They're sort of changing their tune a little bit, and they're realizing, wow, a lot of problems can be solved with just better HVAC, right? Better duct work, better duct design, good equipment, variable speed equipment. It solves a lot of the problems that we have, provides a lot of comfort, and you'll see energy savings, you'll see increased comfort. Now the thing is that do you want to use some tool like what's the next step is to me is like zonal pressurization, right? It's like get a high end gauge and are making sure that the air is getting back to the air handle. We're not pressurizing rooms, depressurizing rooms. So I would say it like starts off in steps, and it really depends on how what kind of problems you need to solve, right? So not every home requires a blower door test in order to solve the HVAC problems. And it's you can go as deep or shallow as you want to go, but just implementing the technology is going to make a big difference. But you don't have to go in, you don't have to be a building performance contractor to leverage MeasureQuick and do well with it.
Yeah. That, for me, it's been a little bit of a challenge to get my head around all of it. And I think generally it's because I just try to think about too many things at once instead of just starting simple. But one of the things I've heard a lot of people saying recently that I think is a nice simplification is this idea of deploying probes, like just making that the standard thing that technicians do when they go to a home is they're just deploying these probes, and the value in that being not just in getting better measurements and finding things, but also in the confidence that the client has and the rigor of your process.
Well, that's what we go. I say it goes back to reasonable standard of care. If you go to your doctor, and I don't care when you walk in the door, the first thing they're going to do is going to get your height and weight. Then they're going to take you in the back. They're going to take your blood pressure. They're going to take your respiratory rate. They're going to listen to your heart. They're going to take your vitals, right? And I don't care if you were there the day before. When you walk back in the doctor's office, they're going to do exactly the same thing again. That is a reasonable standard of care, and they want to make sure that nothing is deviated from the last time that they checked you, right? And those, we always talk about 9 probes every time, every system. And those 9 probes are, suction line, liquid line, pressure, suction line, liquid line, temperature, outdoor air temperature, return air temperature, supply static, return static, right? And so we're looking at both the refrigeration side of the system, and we're looking at the air side of the system to make sure that both are performing and that both are that we have the basic readings that you would get to make a high level diagnostic of what's wrong with the system. So if you deploy those 9 probes on the system, you turn the system on, you deploy the 9 probes, by the time the system is stabilized, we have an assessment of what's going on with the system, how many BTUs are we removing. We have a high level diagnostic that you can start to look at and figure out what's wrong with the system. But it's like, it takes no additional time. And there's not a single reading we're asking you to make that's not something that you need to make in order to make a assessment of the system. So it's that part of it, I think, is so fundamental, so simple. But if you just do that one little thing and change that in your business and put that consistency in your business, it's going to make a huge improvement to the outcome, and it's going to eliminate a tremendous number of callbacks. It's when we start to cut corners and we don't make measurements, and we were talking today about how many of us have gone out and tried to fix everything at the condenser. We walk out, the first thing we do is gauge up. We see low suction pressure. The first thing we think is low on charge. We start adding gas to the system, and before we know it, we have way too much refrigerant in the system, and the filter's plugged up and dirty.
Right.
And it's like, if we just took a few minutes and did some simple things, some simple visual assessment, and then some few key measurements, we'd really keep ourselves out of a lot of trouble and also increase the profitability for a company exponentially.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. What do you think? So I guess if you can look in your kind of crystal ball and you see all of these sort of high level changes that are occurring with labor, but now you have maybe young people who are getting more interested in the trade. You see technology, you see all these organizations like you and NCI and others starting to work together. What are some of the things that you see coming up in the future that you would maybe, I don't want to say warn, but you would maybe bring up to people to pay attention to?
I think like the biggest thing we've got to pay attention to today is probably evacuation, right? I mean, it's been one of the most overlooked processes that we have in our industry. It's all about degassing and dehydration. And now that we're getting into heat pumps, and we're concerned about system longevity, and we're also concerned about, just not, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to service a heat pump in the wintertime. I don't really want to stand outside in an outdoor unit with cold air blowing on me. Miserable service.
I don't mind much in Florida.
Yeah,
It
well,
doesn't get
in
that
Ohio,
cold,
it
so.
sort of stinks. But the idea, evacuation is one of the key things, and we need to relearn that as an industry. Like we, the whole idea of hitting 500 microns is just that on its core is just not nearly enough. We need deeper, longer evacuations. We need a better dehydration. We need to do a decay test to make sure that moisture level, the vapor pressure is not building up to a level that we still have too much moisture in the system. I think that's one of the, if I had to watch out for anything, it would be making sure my guys were using large diameter hoses, making sure they were using a good gauge, making sure they understand how to do it, a proper decay test. And to me, I think it's very important that we document that so we know it was done properly. Then the other thing I think I'd be watching out for is, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we don't really have standardizations for what our technicians do in the field. We a lot of times put a guy in a truck. We hope the guy does, or a guy or gal does what we want them to do, but we don't really know what they do and how they do it and what measurements they take, what they don't. There's no process that we can actually put be able to fine tune to make sure that we get the outcome that we want to have, because different markets and different types of equipment require different processes. So, mini split's going to be a little bit different. If you're doing all mini split installations, it's going to be a lot different than if you're doing all ducted installations or something like that. So we want to make sure we have good processes in place. And I mean, you look at companies like Service Titan or like just putting a CRM in place, the impact that has on a business, because now we are able to measure things and then make course corrections to actually increase profitability. And if you can't control what's going on in the field, then that makes it really, really hard to correct the problems that we have.
Yeah, I do think the days of this is something. So I'm not saying this because I've already done it, because I haven't done it to the extent that we need to. But I think the days of sending a tech out and just saying, "Hey, figure it out," that's not going to work anymore. People need a process, and they need a pretty good level of detail built into the process. So that they are at least guided. And that doesn't mean you're taking away the human element, because they still are going to notice things or bring back to you, hey, this is something new that's emerging that we need to watch for. But just like I talked about that today in the inverter class that I gave, it's like having your techs go out and just saying, hey, just install it the way you know how to install it, without really specifically telling them what's expected in the protocols for the installation, even specific to that piece of equipment, I think is wrong-headed, and that's a direction that I think we all, as contractors, need to really shift our mindset.
Well, I think too, you said something, I don't know if you realized you said it, but when you're wrapping up the conversation, you talked about the level of knowledge that was in the room, and it wasn't what any one person knew in that room. It was collectively what we understood. And so coming to conferences like the NCI conference, when you can sit down with a group of people and we can be talking about a mini split installation and everybody can contribute a little bit, I think really improves everybody's just fundamental understanding of what things we should be watching for, because it's just collectively we have a lot more knowledge than we have individually. And so I think the way that it used to be, we communicate, like the way that we communicate today, the way people communicate today is different. And people get a lot of information from podcasts or LinkedIn or Facebook but it doesn't substitute for like what we're doing here, which is getting people in the room, people together, and actually having real conversations and trying to solve real problems. And I think that collaboration, and that's really what we've been big at MeasureQuick, is like working with everybody, trying to get everybody up to speed, trying to get everybody on the same page, but also like listening to the industry, because we've made a huge number of mistakes along the way on our own, and we've had our own sets of challenges, and it's like we're by no means perfect, but it's like what we are doing is we're evolving and we're continuing to learn and we're continuing to make a better product. And I think that's what, when you get people here, like these guys here are continuing, it's that continual improvement. They're trying to make themselves better. They're trying to be better contractors. They're trying to better solve problems for their customers. And that's the kind of mentality if you're going to come into this industry that you need to come in with. And you need to wake up every day and realize today's a new day and I'm going to learn something new. And I don't know everything, and that's okay. And I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And I'm going to, at the end of the day, I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. Like every day you're growing, every day you're a little bit better, but you can't beat yourself up because, like I said, you can't learn this industry in 6 months, in a year, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 35 years. It's just, you just can't do it.
Yeah, which is, I think, fundamentally one of the things we all like about this industry is that it isn't just simply knowable. There's always something new. And when you ask people what they like about the trade, almost every technician will tell you it's something new every day. They say that all the time. That's always repeated. And that's one of the things we all really do like about it is that it's not that we just get to experience new things, but we get to learn new things too. So it's been a cool journey. Oh, thanks for taking the time to talk this through. This is a really fun event for people who, maybe you're looking at their calendar next year. I would suggest that you take a look at this event. They're going to be actually down in Austin next year. Look at maybe doing some things with NCI. Look at MeasureQuick. Take a look at what MeasureQuick is up to, because I'm really excited about the new changes. I love the grid view. It's really great. Eric Kaiser and I are both real excited about that. So
yeah,
it looks amazing. So
yeah, no, there's some cool stuff, and I think this is an interesting event too, because like unlike this, like symposiums mostly technicians. It's a very, very technician heavy event. This event is still has technicians in it, but it's got a lot more owners and a lot more. And I would say they're owners that are wrench turners. The people that actually still work in the field, and they want to put performance contracting into their business. Like they're ready to step up to the next level and actually do something different than their competition. And they realize that there's a lot of problems that they're figuring out that are very hard to solve, and they need additional training and support to solve them. And it's like, this is where I think what makes this event different and unique. And so, I think it's not like, well, one or the other, where I'm going to go to this event or the other event. They're very, very unique. And these are events too, I think, that are unlike, like AHR is just about like looking at some products, and those things, they may be cool, but they're not like training events like this. These are deep training events where it's about also the networking afterwards. Yeah. So these are definitely worth going to.
Yeah. I had a really fun conversation yesterday with a guy who's literally just getting back into it. He did test and balance a few years back, and he's just literally getting reconnected. And I'm like, this is going to be a fun ride. A lot of really neat people to meet, resources you can draw from. It's always very valuable. And one thing I really like is every event, every organization kind of has their thing that they do well. And I feel like we're all talking and communicating well, probably better than we almost ever have, which is a really nice thing. So I'm proud of the progress we're making, and the progress MeasureQuick is making. And there's just a lot of cool stuff that I think we're going to get to do. So
awesome.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, as always. Thanks.